All right, we live.
Hey, Shalom, Shalom. First and foremost, we want to give all the praises to Yahweh Bahashem, which means He in the name of salvation, Yahweh Shai, and to the 12 tribes scattered abroad, enduring in this new covenant. I want to say greetings and salutations.
Shalom, Israel. Shalom.
So, me and my brother, we decided that we wanted to produce a video here going into Ezekiel 20. The name of this topic, quoting from Ezekiel 20 and 35, is I will take you out of the wilderness. So there's a lot of misconceptions and indoctrinations that are going around Israel that's been going around for years in reference to Ezekiel 20 and the context of it and what it actually means. There are some camps out there saying that, the wilderness is talking literal, that we got to pack our bags, get our dog, get our cat, get our birds, and get out to the wilderness and pitch up tents and do like a tent city, like Skid Row or something. So the misconception of it is it's not talking about a literal wilderness, and that's what kind of inspired us to go ahead and produce this video. So going into it, when you go into Ezekiel, in particular Ezekiel 20, you understand that the context of Ezekiel speaking in is about ancient Babylon. So the context of it has no type of futuristic, prophetic meaning, because the context of it is dealing with ancient Babylon. Now, a lot of people say, well, the same thing that's happened before seems like the same thing that's happening today. Well, that's because Yahweh does not, he works on an everlasting cycle. He does basically the same thing over and over, but you would have to understand the judgments to even have begin to have an understanding of that. But that's why everything seems so similar. That's why even with dealing with the current captivity and the state that we're in right now, how he gathered them out of Babylon is very symbolic to how, the elect, whoever they are, shall be gathered from the four corners of the earth. And that's what we're basically proving. So like I was saying, Nebuchadnezzar, he had control over the whole known world. He ruled over all the kings of Samaria, which is in the kingdom of Israel, right? So he ruled from there. He also implanted 5 heathen nations, okay, that were scattered with the mighty wind and with the stretched out arm. Okay, so the same type of way that he scattered Israel is the same way that he's actually going to gather Israel too, the remnant, the elect. So we're going into that. We're also going to go into the rebuilding of the temple until the coming of the Messiah, right? And so the wilderness of the people is not referring to the Gentiles and not America. Well, what I mean by Gentiles is it's not talking to the Gentiles. Okay. So could I get Jeremiah chapter 27 and start at verse 6, please?
This is Jeremiah 27 and 6. And now have I given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and the beasts of the field have I given him also to serve him.
Mm-hmm. So
and all nations. Okay.
No, finish out 8. I thought you were done with 8 already. Sorry.
Oh, come on. This is verse 7. And all nations shall serve him and his son and his son's son until the very time of his land come. And then many nations and great kings shall serve themselves of him. And it shall come to pass that the nation and kingdom which will not serve the same Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and that will not put their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon, that nation will I punish, saith Yahweh, with the sword and the famine and the pestilence until I consume them by his hand.
Okay. Now, people might get that kind of confused and contradictive, because how could the Most High uplift someone so evil, but then tell Israel to put their neck under the yoke of him? Well, it's symbolic because it would understand that Israel fell off and started worshiping other gods. This is the whole reason why Babylon had to come and take Israel into captivity in the first place. But can I get some backup on that? Can I get Jeremiah 34 and verse 1, please?
This is Jeremiah 34 and verse 1. The word which came unto Jeremiah from the Lord, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and all his army, and all the kingdoms of the earth, of his dominion, and all the people fought against Jerusalem and against all the cities thereof, saying, Thus saith Yahweh, the power of Israel, go and speak to Zedekiah the king of Judah, and tell him, Thus saith Yahweh, behold, I will give this city into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he shall burn it with fire.
So the king of Babylon came up with an army made up of all the kingdoms of the world. Now, Jeremiah said that he, the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, was like an overseer on a chessboard, looking over and controlling as far as the eye can see, okay, and moving things according to his will. You know, this is very important because when we read our scripture and when we really get into the Bible, we got to really put our heart into it and try to into the understanding and the context of what's being said, because your life depends on it. Your life depends on the understanding that you have of the doctrine. It does. And having a broken doctrine or broken thinking in regards to parts of the doctrine, you're going to condemn yourself because you're either going to look at people a certain way without judging their character or spirit, or you're just going to just go off and have just and let yourself get succumb to left-handed spirits hopping on you, you know? So, you know, that's why it's important that we do that. From there, I just want to just kind of bring out just a little bit of some history, right? And we're going to go into the rebuilding of the temple right now, just for a second. So during our history, right, Jerusalem has been attacked 52 times, been captured and recaptured 44 times, besieged 23 times, and destroyed 2 times. And we're talking about the temple. The temple's been destroyed twice. Once by Nebuchadnezzar in the 3rd campaign, where he went and totally leveled Jerusalem. And of course, in 70 AD with Titus of the Roman general. Okay. So briefly, I want to go into who built the first temple. Obviously, it was King Solomon. Can I get 1 Kings 6 and 2, please, Ronnie?
No problem. 1 Kings 6 and 2. All right, this is 1 Kings 6 and 2. And the house which King Solomon built for Yahweh, the length thereof was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 20 cubits, and the height thereof 30 cubits.
Okay, that was it for that. I just wanted to show you that King Solomon is the one who built the house of the Lord, because it says in context, and the house which King Solomon built. Okay, that's been established. But the ground that Solomon built on was already sanctified by Moses. But we understand that Moses and Aaron didn't bring the people into Israel. Joshua did. He was a successor to Moses, right? So when we were getting the lay of the land and about to go to war with the Philistines, we sent the 12 spies in to report the agriculture of the lay of the land, right? The fortified cities. And we understand that the Philistines were a big people. They were a bigger stature people than the people of Israel, because when they came back from seeing, it scared 10 of the 12 spies who went to go, take the lay of the land, and they falsified their report to Moses, is exaggerating the danger. So 2 of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, they didn't go along with the majority that tried to convince the Israelites that they could take the land. But we know most of them believed the other 10. So Yahweh killed all of them except Joshua and Caleb. And Joshua was named successor to Moses as instructed by Yahweh. And Joshua is the one who led us into the land and renewed the Mosaic covenant of our God. And Caleb was from the tribe of Judah. From there, Solomon's temple was destroyed in 586 BC by the king of Babylon when he came and conquered Jerusalem totally in his 3rd campaign. Can you give me Jeremiah 29 and 10, please?
No problem. Jeremiah 29 and 10. All right, this is Jeremiah 29 and verse 10. Mm-hmm. Look, for thus saith Yahweh, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word towards you, in causing you to return to this place.
Come. So according to Jeremiah 29 and 10, the exile in Babylon, it lasted 70 years. So, and let me get 2 Kings. Let me just get first verse of 24. Just want to show the context of 2 Kings 24.
Come. 2 Kings 24 and 1. In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him.
Okay, so what I'm showing is that Jeremiah was prophesying about the impending Babylonian captivity, and Jeremiah was also allowed to see the coming of the Savior and the restoration of Yahweh's church and the state Israel would be in toward the end days. That's why when you read Lamentations and Jeremiah, correlate with each other. Can I get Jeremiah?
Not America.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say that Jeremiah and Book of Lamentations is not America. Not America, brothers. Not America. So we'll stop that.
Right. Because when you go into the context of it and the historical standpoint, you have to make sure that what the prophets are writing about makes sense. Because a lot of that's why I was just going to bring out, just like how you brought that out about Ephesians, just like Lamentations, Lamentations and Jeremiah correlate with each other. So we know that what Lamentations is about is Judah getting taken over by Babylon, and how it was a mourning to Israel in itself, because the Israel was made desolate. The land was made desolate. There was no one living in there anymore. So Lamentations correlate with Jeremiah. You have something to say, Roddy?
No, that's it. That's it.
And that's also what I was just going to say now, because when we go into Jeremiah 26, 1-9, you see Jerusalem referred to as Shiloh, which was the first permanent place for the tabernacle and the same place where the 12 tribes got their lot inheritance. So when you go into verse 1 in Jeremiah 26, you see Yahweh allowed the tabernacle to be desecrated by the Philistines. So would he allow the temple to be desecrated by the Babylonians. And let me back that up. And let me get Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 12, and then jump to verse 14, please.
Jeremiah 7 and verse 12. But go ye now unto my place, which was in Shiloh, where I set my name at first, and see what I did to it for the wickedness of my people Israel. Verse 14. Therefore will I do unto this house, which is called by my name, wherein ye trust, and unto the place which I gave to you and to your fathers, as I have done to Shiloh.
So the Most High God, the Father, has allowed this to happen to his place that was named in his name. So he's allowing this to happen. And then let me just back that up, and let me get Jeremiah 26, 14-15, please. Just to back up Jeremiah 7, 12 and 4, verse 12 and 14.
This is Jeremiah 26, 14. As for me, behold, I am in your pocket. As for me, behold, I am in your hand. Do with me as seemeth good, and me unto you. But know ye for certain that if ye put me to death, ye shall surely bring innocent blood upon yourselves, and upon the city, and upon the inhabitants thereof. For of a truth, Yahweh have sent me unto you to speak all these words in your ears.
Right. So he's saying, do with me as thou seemeth good. You can do what you will, but the Lord's word will stand. And if you choose to kill me, you will shed innocent blood, but still you will not do away with my words. Very simple. So jumping from there to Jeremiah 52, which is the last chapter of Jeremiah, it's a summary of everything that happened in Jeremiah 39. You go into the status of Jehoiakim in Babylon since Jeremiah was taken to Egypt. And Baruch the scribe is the one who finished up the rest of Jeremiah 52. So when we go into 2 Kings 24 and chapter 24 and 25, 24 goes into the king of Babylon, making Jehoiakim his servant. He obviously did wicked and had to get taken down. And then chapter 25 goes into Zedekiah ruling for 9 years. And then on the 9th year, he is when Jerusalem was besieged on the third campaign. And the temple was desecrated. Anything you have to add so far, Roddy?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so to show that the king of Babylon, he actually had control over all these heathen nations, right? Let me get Jeremiah 9 and start at verse 23.
This is Jeremiah 9:23. Thus saith Yahweh, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, neither let the mighty man glory in his might. Let not the rich man glory in his riches, but let him that glory in this, that he understandeth and knoweth me, that I am Yahweh, which exercise kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth. For in these things I delight, saith Yahweh. Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that I will punish all them which are circumcised with the uncircumcised. I'm going to read verse 26 too. Egypt and Judah and Edom and the children of Ammon and Moab and all that are in the uttermost corners that dwell in the wilderness, for all these nations are uncircumcised, and all the house of Israel are uncircumcised in the heart.
Right. So what Jeremiah 9:23-26 is going into everyone that was in confederate with the uncircumcised, showing the king of Babylon as the king of the whole world. Also, I was talking to a brother on Facebook, and he was trying to say, well, what about Jeremiah 47 and the cup of wrath and all the nations that were in confederate and to desecrating the children of Israel? I'm like, sure, but pause. Judah and the house of Israel were also in that cup of wrath. And they just didn't get it all at the same time. Our cup of wrath was having Babylon, where the Syrians coming and taking the house of Israel, and then Babylon coming and the Chaldeans coming and taking over Judah. So that was our cup of wrath from the Most High. But still, he was going to give the cup of wrath to everyone that was involved with that. And that was all the nations of the earth, because they were all under the heel of Nebuchadnezzar. That's what we were bringing out Jeremiah 9 for, to show that everyone was in confederate with the uncircumcised, including Israel. Khan? So from there, let me get Jeremiah 25 and start at verse 6 and then jump to 31.
Con, and real quick, I want to say this. Notice how it said in verse 26, all of them that dwell in the wilderness. So is that a literal wilderness that Egypt and Judah and Moab are dwelling? No. So that's going to pay.
I missed that part. Yeah.
Con, it's all good. But notice how it said in all the wilderness. So clearly it's not literal. But anyway, Jeremiah
25, start at verse 9.
Verse 9.
And then the point will be 11.
Okay. Behold, I will send and take all the families of the north, saith Yahweh, and Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and will bring them against this land and against the inhabitants thereof, and against all these nations round about, and will utterly destroy them, and make them an astonishment and a hissing and perpetual desolation. Moreover, I will take from them the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride, the sound of millstones, and the light of the candle. Verse 11. Is which one 11?
Yes.
Con. And this whole land shall be desolation and astonishment, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years.
Okay, so what land would be made a desolation?
Israel.
Right, and if you want to get the proof of that, you can go to Jeremiah 25:1, because it says the word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah. So this is the word in this chapter, is everything in this chapter is concerning Judah. So the land that's been made desolate, and when you go into verse 12, it talks about the 70 years it would be made desolate by Babylon, right? So we understand that the whole land being made a desolate is referring to Israel, right? So just bringing that out. So Israel was not being, well, you had the poor people that were there, and there's proof of that in the Second Kings, those that were left to tend the land and things like that. But for more or less, it was made a desolation. It wasn't a working society. Mm-hmm. So, and then jump to 31, please.
Verse 31.
Let's start at verse 30, sorry.
Verse 30, okay. Therefore prophesy thou against them all these words, and say unto them, Yahweh shall roar from on high, and utter his voice from his holy habitation. He shall mightily roar upon his habitation. He shall give a shout, as they that tread the grapes against all the inhabitants of the earth.
And there's,
Right, it's
verse
verse
31.
31. A noise shall come even to the ends of the earth, for Yahweh has a controversy with the nations. He will plead with all flesh. He will give them that are wicked to the sword, saith Yahweh.
That's another cut to knowing that it's not a literal wilderness, because you see the separation in the flesh and the spirit, because at this point, all flesh has done wickedly in the eyes of the Lord. And we just read that in Jeremiah 9. So in regards to Israel, so he will plead with the flesh and he will give the wicked the sword. In Isaiah 14, 16 through 17, you can bring that out. It talks about that proverb written against Babylon.
No problem.
Yeah.
This is Isaiah 14. Now, Israel, pay attention, because it's going to show you the wilderness is not literal. So just pay attention. This is Isaiah 14 and 16. They that see thee shall narrowly go upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof? What's up?
So what they make? What did he make the world?
As a wilderness.
The world, right?
The world.
Oh, but was the whole world full of trees and plants and vegetation? Was the whole world just full of forest life? Was that how we were living? Oh, okay. So it can't be talking about literal trees and animals and things like that, correct?
Nope.
Because Babylon they had immaculate statues and altars built to their gods. So they weren't living in no wilderness, correct?
Nope.
Okay, so in the context of Isaiah 14 and in verse 17, when it says they made the world as a wilderness, you have to ask yourself, if it's not talking about literal trees and Smokey the Bear and Boo Boo the Foo, then what is it referring to? What's the wilderness? Well, let's continue. Let's understand that. Was that it you wanted to bring in 17? Did you have anything else to add?
Well, yeah, real quick, I just want to say, well, if the world was made a wilderness, that means that the entire world was judged, because we just read in Jeremiah 25 how the entire world was going to be judged by King Babylon. So basically, the wilderness is a place of judgment. Just like today, the whole world is under the rule of Rome.
Right.
We cannot run anywhere. So this one power controls the entire world. That's the wilderness, the place of judgment where we're all right now. We're being judged.
And everyone is scattered within all nations, and that kills your genealogy doctrine about knowing what tribe you're in. Because if we're all scattered in the wilderness, which is of the people, and if Rome is in control of that wilderness and of that beast system today, which mimics ancient Babylon, then it cannot be according to flesh how the world will be judged. And it's even in Jeremiah 25, we just brought out in verse 31 about the separation of the flesh and the spirit. Because at this point, all flesh in the world has done wickedly, because the powers that be are the ones that run the system. So, I mean, it just goes hand in hand. But
and real quickly, EJ, I got a precept. I'm backing up further.
Bring it out.
This is Psalms 107, and I'm going to start at verse 1. Oh, give thanks unto Yahweh, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. Let the redeemed of Yahweh say so whom he had redeemed from the hand of his enemy. And notice how it says the redeemed. That's not all Israel. It's only the remnant. But anyway, and gather them out of the lands from the east and from the west and from the north and from the south. So Yahweh gathered all these people out of all the different nations they were scattered to. And watch verse 4. They wandered in the wilderness in a solitary way. They found no city to dwell in. Hungry and thirsty, their soul fainted in them. Now that sounds like the wilderness is a place of judgment, because that goes back to the curses.
Right.
They were scattered. So basically, the wilderness is not a literal wilderness with trees and shit. It's figurative. It means judgment.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
So yeah, that's absolutely right. So when we're talking about the wilderness, we know that it's a place of judgment because Israel was placed under the yoke of Babylon, who was in control of all the world. And we understand that it was called the wilderness that he controlled. So what Israel was in at that point was a state of captive judgment. So, Khan, can I get Daniel 4:18?
Khan, you said Daniel 4:18?
Yeah.
Khan. This is Daniel 4:18.
And go into the king of Babylon and the dream he had.
This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now, O Belshazzar, declare the interpretation thereof, for as much as all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known unto me the interpretation, but that are able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in me. Then Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, was astonished for 1 hour, and his thoughts troubled him. And the king spake and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation thereof trouble you. He answered and said, my lord, the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof to thy enemies. Verse 20, the tree that thou sawest, which grew and was strong, whose height reached unto the heaven, and the sight thereof to all the earth, whose leaves were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all. Under the beasts of the field dwelt, and upon whose branches the fowls of the heaven had their habitation. It is
Just
thou,
pretty
O king, that are grown and become strong, for thy greatness is grown and reacheth unto heaven, and thy dominion to the end of the earth.
Come. So the king of Babylon was dreaming about Daniel coming to him to interpret the dream for him. Now, Daniel clears the air about things in the vision because remember, the dream troubled King Nebuchadnezzar. Why? Because it was a vision for Israel. That's why when Daniel interpreted it, he was able to decipher what was what, right? So that's why Nebuchadnezzar was shook so bad, because Babylon was this big, great tree that grew strong and its height reached the heavens, and all the other nations benefited from Jerusalem's downfall. So Jeremiah 50:23 goes perfectly with Isaiah 14:16-17, because Babylon would be made a desolation, and that it was going to happen in a way that all the nations will see it and be astonished. Can I get Daniel 2:36?
No problem. Daniel 2:36. This is Daniel 2:36. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation before the king.
Okay, from there. And then from there, just jump to First Ezra's 5 and 8.
This is First Ezra's 5 and 8. And they return unto Jerusalem and to the other parts of Jewry. And they returned unto Jerusalem and to the other parts of Jewry, every man to his own city, who came with Zerubbabel, with Joshua, Nehemiah, and Zacharias, and Rasias, Enanias, Mordecai, the Belsaris, Asphars, Realists, Romans, and Bana, the guides.
Mm-hmm. So Zerubbabel was governor after Achaemenid's empire's province, which was called Yehud Midinata. He was a grandson of Jeconiah and Penuel Tamate, king of Judah. And then, so that's the setup there. So after coming from Babylon, we had those that returned into Jerusalem, which wasn't everyone, of course, and they're specific. And these were the ones that kind of helped bring in the first groups that came out of Babylon into the land to help rebuild the temple. Anything you want to add, Roddy?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. So that's why I had him bring it out, because when you go in the book of Ezra, it starts out with a decree from the king of Cyrus allowing those that were of the spirit to come rebuild the temple destroyed by the Babylonians. So we see after that effect taking place. Can I get Ezra 3 and 7?
Yep, Ezra 3 and 7. This is Ezra 3 and 7. They gave money also unto the masons and to the carpenters, and meat and drink and oil unto them of Zidon and to them of Tyre, to bring cedar trees from Lebanon to the sea of Joppa, according to the grant that they had of Cyrus, king of Persia.
Right. And let me get Ezra 4 and 3.
4 and 3, yep. But Zerubbabel and Joshua and the rest of the chief of the fathers of Israel said unto them, Ye have no thing to do with us to build an house unto our God, but we ourselves together will build unto Yahweh, God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, has commanded us.
Come. So the point of that, so when Joshua and Zerubbabel took us out of the Babylonian captivity with that cleansed heart, and this did happen because we were led into the Babylon captivity in the first place for worshiping idols. So we stopped worshiping idols. That's where we got the new heart, and we rebuilt the temple and started worshiping the Lord according to the law of Moses, because we know that Ezra was scribed in the law of Moses, right? So when Nehemiah and when the people came back with them, they put down the idols, also with Ezra and Joshua, who was a Levite, son of Aaron, and Zerubbabel was a governor, he was a Judite. They helped bring those of that spirit to come back and finish building the temple, and they actually finished building the wall. So it's not talking about America in a nutshell. You know. So yeah. So you have anything to add, Roddy?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So, I mean, that's about it. I mean, you know, so just for you guys out there, man, when it's talking about the wilderness in Ezekiel 20, the context of it is not dealing with America, and it's definitely not dealing with a literal wilderness. The wilderness is coincides with being a place of judgment, and we know that Yahweh placed the king of Babylon as his servant, as his sword in the place of judgment. So we understand that when it says, I will take you out of the wilderness, it's symbolic with taking those of that spirit out of the land, which was our captivity, and back into our land to rebuild the temple, which is symbolic also with the coming of Christ and in reference to the end days, you know.
God.
So if you have any type of lasting precepts you want to bring out, any lasting words before we do log off, Roddy?
Yes, I want to explain the wilderness and Revelation. So I'm going to bring it out because I know Israel going to ask about that.
Okay.
So I'm going to bring it out. I'm going to explain it real quick. Okay. This is the book of Revelations 12. And I'm going to start at verse. Let's see. I'm going to start at verse. Let me see what I'm going to start at. In verse 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared of Yahweh, that they should feed her there 1,203 score days. Now, One West teaches that, oh, this is America. We were fed with food stamps and credit cards for hundreds of years, and this is America. No, this is not what it's dealing with. This is dealing with the elect going into the land of Israel, and really with the two witnesses. And you read that in the previous chapter, and this is why let's see that read it. So let's read into verse 1 of the book of Revelations 11. This is Revelations 11, and I'm gonna start at verse 2. But the court which is without the temple lead out and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. In the holy city they shall tread underfoot 42 months. And I will give unto my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,203 score days, clothed in sackcloth. The same amount of time the woman fled into the wilderness. So this is clearly not dealing with America. This is dealing with the first and second woe, when the elect and two witnesses are prophesying in the land, smiting the earth with plagues and judging the world. It has nothing to do with, South America or America. This is dealing with the woes. So let's just get that clear. So the wilderness in Revelations is not the same as wilderness in Ezekiel. It's two different wildernesses. So we got to understand the context and just go from there. So that's really about it. I'm good.
Con. And if you think about it, wilderness could also be another way of saying exiled, because Israel was exiled into a land that they didn't know of for the transgressions that they made against the Lord. So if you think about wilderness, just think about, well, shit, like someone being exiled to a place where they don't know, where they never even seen or heard of. It doesn't have to be a literal wilderness. If someone took you from the place, if you're from New York and you were just suddenly placed in Mexico, would that be a place that you remembered, that you knew, or were you comfortable with? It, 9 times out of 10, it wouldn't. You wouldn't understand the language. You wouldn't understand the culture, how to get around, how to get food, how to talk, how to do anything. So when Nebuchadnezzar came through and the Assyrians came through, what they did is they ended up scattering us all around. And the proof of that is in the beginning of the video when we showed how Nebuchadnezzar had all these heathen nations implanted in Jerusalem and everywhere, just like today. You have the police force, right, which is governed and who are law bound by the government, who are the powers that be, that uphold the laws of the land of the people that are in charge. So it was the same idea. So you could have a whole bunch of so-called Jews living in an area, but guess what? Nebuchadnezzar had control over the whole world. So it didn't matter. Whoever you went to that was in authority in that province was someone that was implanted by Nebuchadnezzar himself. So that's the understanding that you can take away from this, is like, wait, well, Nebuchadnezzar had control over the whole world. So that means that just like today, you can't really bat an eye, unless it's being, bounded by the laws that are placed on the land already. So it's the same idea. There's nothing new under the sun. That's why you can't take what was going on in ancient Babylon and try to put the context of it for today. All you can do is learn the pattern of Yahweh, learn his judgments, and then from there you'll be able to pick up the pattern and the similarities when it comes to how the scripture ties together, and how the wilderness and Ezekiel can be tied to the wilderness in Revelations 12, like the brother just brought out. So that's all I have to say about that.
And actually, I have a precept, one more precept just to show what it's done with the wilderness in Ezekiel. Ezekiel 29:5. Now, context is talking about judgment on Egypt by Babylon. So Ezekiel 29:5. And I will lead thee thrown into the wilderness, you and all the fish of thy rivers. Thou shalt fall upon the open fields. Thou shalt not be brought together nor gathered. I have given thee for meat the beasts of the field and to the fowls of the heaven. Now, let's see what this is doing. Notice how it said, I will lead Egypt thrown into the wilderness. So verse 12 says this, and I will make the land of Egypt desolate in the midst of the countries that are desolate, and her cities among the cities that are laid waste shall be desolate for 40 years. And I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations and will disperse them through the countries. That was a wilderness, scattering into the four corners of the earth, destroying them, judging them. So that's just to show that the wilderness ain't literal in Ezekiel.
Right.
That's about it.
That sounds like a cherry on top right there. So I hope that those out there that are listening and have sat through the video, I hope you have a clear understanding now when we go into Ezekiel 20 and in reference to the wilderness and it being judgment for Israel and getting taken from that place. Especially when you go into Jeremiah 29:10, when he says that he's going to visit us after those 70 years of the captivity, causing those of that spirit to return to this place, which was Jerusalem, and the temple getting rebuilt. So I think that's pretty much hitting it on the nose. And I mean, sheesh. Yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. Yeah. So so sounds like a plan. Well, if there's nothing more, we want to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahamashiach, Yahweh Shai, and greetings, and salutations.
Shalom.
Shalom.